The King of the Monsters is red hot. Here's your look at the new NECA toys. This is the Godzilla King of the Monsters, Target exclusive. Following the global success of Godzilla and Kong Skull Island comes the next chapter in Warner Bros. Pictures and Legendary Pictures' cinematic MonsterVerse, an epic action-adventure that pits Godzilla against some of the most popular monsters in pop culture history. The new story follows the heroic efforts of the cryptozoological agency Monarch as its members face off against a battery of god-sized monsters, including the mighty Godzilla, who collides with Mothra, Rodan, and his ultimate nemesis, the three-headed King Ghidorah. When these ancient super species, thought to be mere myths, rise again, they all vie for supremacy, leaving humanity's very existence hanging in the balance. It seems the best place to start is the same place we always start in these reviews, and that's figuring out how tall these figures stand. In the case here of Target exclusive Godzilla, which is unfortunately only limited to the US and in Target stores, we're going to first figure out how tall the figure stands. Maybe then we'll do the length. For the height of the figure, you're looking at Godzilla standing 6.2 inches in height. In centimeters, that works out to be 15.9, so about 16 centimeters tall. Switching that then back to inches, we're going to go from the snout to the end of his tail, and we're going to stop it right there. From the end to end, nose to, or snout, jaw if you will. We'll start with jaw. Okay, we'll go with jaw. Jaw to tail, you're looking at the length of the figure to be roughly about 10 inches. I easily could have stretched and straightened that tail a little bit more to give us a longer length, but we're going to go ahead with 10 inches nonetheless. And that in centimeters works out to be 25.4 centimeters long. I'd like to send out a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys who were nice enough to send this sample my way. Like I said, this is going to be a Target exclusive if you're looking to pick up this one for yourself. If it does seem rather familiar, we're just going to go ahead and move that one over slightly for a second. I'll bring in the previously looked at Godzilla King of the Monsters, the 2019 version. And yes, in fact, Virginia, they are the exact same figure. It's quite drastic, the changes that could be made simply by just changing the color palette. The neutral gray of various scales and color variants. How drastically different that now looks when you change it to this almost living lava color scheme. The warm oranges, the reds, and the very vibrant yellows on the top fin plates of Godzilla. Again, these are the exact same figure, but you can see how much different they are when NECA Toys releases them as a variant, now changing to this bright red color scheme. Really liking the look of that. The figure itself does require a little bit of assembly. What you will need to do when you get this out of the packaging is install the back section of the tail. It's rather finicky and stubborn because the ball joint has to fit into a smaller socket. If I may recommend, some recommendation possibly, I would heat the ball socket, more importantly I guess the socket section right here, so that it has a slightly softer plastic. When you then put the ball joint in, it should be a lot easier to put that in. I mean, you can go that route. One thing I also would say too is be very, very careful. I found it was a lot easier to twist the tail around this way and grab onto the bottom section. If you do grab it from the top section, you're kind of now dealing with all these additional spikes on the top. They're not necessarily sharp, but you definitely do feel it when you put your hand against it, trying to wiggle and finesse that socket into the hole. When you get that tail in place, you have yourself quite a long-looking Godzilla. As cool as the other Godzilla was, probably not the best choice of describing this because there's nothing really quite cool about Godzilla. He literally looks like he's flowing lava. And then across the surface of that lava-colored red, you can see areas in which it almost looks like it would have cooled off. These platelets, the top surface of its skin is done in a slightly darker red, almost borderlining a brown or black. The face sculpt is exactly the same to the one that we had a look at. Maybe once again, we'll just bring that one in so that you guys can see the difference between the two. We'll open up the mouth. There we go. A little harder on this particular one to get your finger on there. Let's go ahead and grab it. Be a lot easier if I had the nails available to do this. There we go. And if you look at the difference between the two, I have to then remind you guys that they are the exact same figure, but what changes, boy, what a big change when you see the difference between them side by side. The internal section, or the inside section of his mouth, is in a very bright orange. The tongue is done in a very stark white. And it really does stand out. Like you would almost imagine energy pulsating on the inside throat of Godzilla before unleashing that against one of the monsters. Again, the head sculpt is exactly the same. When I did get this out of the packaging, it did look like a second like the eyes were done in solid white. If you look at them really, really closely, though, it does almost look like there is a pupil right there. It might very well just be my eyes playing tricks on me. Maybe the eyes are a solid white, but I feel as if I'm seeing a little pupil happening right there in a darker orange. The head sculpt, though, is really quite good. Just again, taking the exact same mold, I mean, there's nothing really that's been changed to it, and adding this color scheme is really giving me an all-new experience when I'm looking at this figure. I really liked it the first go-around, and really liking it that much more when I'm seeing it in this bright color scheme of the reds, the oranges, and on top of that, the higher platelets of spikes sticking out from his back are done in this very glowing, pulsating yellow. They are not actually really glowing, but the coloring is done so well that it does feel like I'm having something in my hand where these are lighting up. I like how they have veined their way out, so it almost even looks like the top section of Godzilla is split open and the spikes are sticking out through the surface of his skin, and you can see like all the lava that's kind of starting to trickle its way out from it. Again, like looking at it, it looks such a cool looking effect by simply just adding these warmer colors of all the colors I already mentioned. Now, unfortunately, the one thing that gets sacrificed, unfortunately, is the fact that if you look at the bottom of his feet, it's about the only section that's missing color. All this color here has been done, but it almost seems like it's reversed on his feet. These are also done in translucent plastic, and I can't imagine it's simply just done on the feet, leading me to believe that there's translucent plastic being utilized for the entire body. But I'm not really sure specifically why the feet are kept to this color, because you really can see a stark line difference where this is a completely different type of color scheme versus this one right up here. I'm not sure if they intentionally did it that way, but it's definitely the inverted color scheme. Like this should be primarily the kind of warmer orangey red. It should not be like the translucent red that they ended up using. So again, I gotta wonder why they specifically kept the feet as translucent plastic when clearly the rest of the figure has all of everything painted in. If we continue our way and looking with our vision from here to all the way down here, the continuation of these lighter yellows and lighter white colors continue their way onto the very ends of the tail. So I really like that it's finished all the way down, other than, again, just the sections of its feet. The articulation is exactly the same on this particular figure. We'll have a look at that right now. The head rotates back and forth. You can open and close the mouth. A lot easier, actually, than the 2019 regular version release of Godzilla. The head moves up and down, and then you've got all these individual sections of ball joints. So like the neck, for example, moves up and down, or back and forth, slightly up and down. And then you've got a mid-torso articulation via also a ball joint. If we look at the tail is sectioned off. We're rather familiar with these now with many of the releases that NECA have done for Godzilla. So you've got a ball joint here, a ball joint here, 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 and here. And that still continues all the way down to the end of the tail. The extra piece that you're going to be adding all has individual knuckle joints, all utilizing individual ball joints. You got to imagine how many things they've put into it, simply just giving us an articulated tail. It's quite the marvel, actually. The legs hinge out forward, well, in and out, not really too much. You can move the leg forward and back. He does have a bend at the knee, but the knee, actually, the knee articulation, you can get more so a straight leg or you can also bend the leg back. When you do get it out of the packaging, the leg is actually bent back, but if you wanted to, you can straighten them out just a little bit more as well. The feet swivel back and forth. There is a bit of an ankle rocker. And then when you look at the hands, the individual arms are on pin and socket joints with an additional hinge joint and a rotation in the forearm, and the exact same thing on the hand. This Godzilla I really quite like. And personally speaking, I'm all for the idea of giving us color variations for existing figures that we already have in our collection. Most of us did get a chance to pick up the initial Godzilla. I personally loved the mold. And how do you make that mold not necessarily better, because for me, I still like the traditional colors of Godzilla, but to definitely make it feel like an all completely new figure is by incorporating all these neat looking colors, by incorporating like the oranges, the reds, and the yellows. All of that come contributing together and give you a really neat looking version, a neat variation to the initial Godzilla that we had to look at already. Now, you simply can't take a broad brushstroke and paint across all figure molds and simply give them the luxury of being re-released in a color variation. Some figures don't simply work as a new color version, but Godzilla seems the exception to the rule. We've gotten the exact same molds in previous instances before, some being the polar extreme, the colds of the blues and the purples. Now we're having a look at the Target exclusive Godzilla in the quite extreme opposite colors of the warmer reds. This one seems like it's a living volcano. It seems is almost like looking at Godzilla, like the spikes are sticking out from his spine and erupting all this lava that's trickling down his body. The color scheme is fantastic on this release. And even like looking at the platelets, the spikes sticking out from his spine, it looks as if they're glowing on their own accord. This Godzilla was a figure I already liked in the first place, but keeping that same mold, which I already liked, and adding a new coat of paint to it definitely does give you a different experience when you're looking at Godzilla. It's not the most traditional of Godzilla, because usually when you're looking at Godzilla, you're expecting grays and stuff. This is quite the extreme to that, but an extreme that works in a really successful way. As I said, this one is going to be a Target exclusive, so if you're looking to source this one up for yourself, you'll have to check out your local Target stores. Unfortunately, I don't have Targets here in Canada, but again, a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that were nice enough to send this sample my way. Today, we were having a look at the Godzilla King of the Monsters, the Lava Godzilla, which is not really his name. I would love to just call him Lava Godzilla. But this was the Target exclusive. If you are new to this channel or a longtime viewer and maybe never got around to it, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, and periodically probably be your best interest to head on over to the homepage and see if there's any videos that you may have missed along the way. We're going to continue to churn it through all the way through to 2020, so there's going to be a whole lot of new NECA reviews coming soon to this channel, so keep your peepers peeled for those. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.